The Kethri considered themselves immortal. Not in the literal sense, though some certainly believed it, but functionally as a species they might as well have been. Their average lifespan stretched beyond 100,000 years. Their elders had seen stars be born and die. The oldest among them, the revered high scholar Kalos, remembered a time before the Galactic Council had even existed. To them, the shorter-lived species were amusing, curious, like sparks in the dark, flaring brightly, then vanishing before they could even comprehend the vastness of time. And then humanity arrived. They were newcomers, a species barely a few thousand years removed from primitive tools. Their lifespans pitifully short, barely more than a century at best. They should have been irrelevant, a footnote in history, a species that flared and faded like all the others before them. But they weren't. Something was wrong with humanity. A challenge in the Hall of Time. The Hall of Time was one of the Ketheri's greatest sanctuaries, a towering crystalline structure built over millennia. It housed knowledge spanning millions of years, records of empires that had risen and fallen, of civilizations lost to entropy. Here, within its sacred halls, High Scholar Kalos and his peers welcomed a delegation of humans. It was a formal affair, diplomatic, ceremonial, but the underlying purpose was clear. The Kethri would impress upon the newcomers the sheer insignificance of their existence. Kalos towered over them. His robes shimmered with the light of knowledge, embedded with gemstones from dead planets. His elongated features, untouched by time, radiated an aura of wisdom that only the truly ancient possessed. He gestured to the great pillars of history. "This," he said, his voice like the echo of a dying star, "is the weight of time. A burden you cannot possibly comprehend." He turned his golden eyes upon the humans, expecting awe, reverence, perhaps even fear. But the human at the front, a man named Colonel David Klein, simply smiled. "Nice collection," Klein said, hands in his pockets. "Must have taken a while." Kalos frowned. Humans had no sense of scale. "Your species is young," Kalos continued, his tone patient. "You burn brightly but briefly. Do you not feel sorrow, knowing that none of you shall live to see the true unfolding of the cosmos?" Klein shrugged. We get by." A ripple of amusement spread through the gathered humans. The Kethri were baffled. How could a species with such a fleeting existence be so casual about it? Kalos, ever the diplomat, continued, "Perhaps it is a mercy. Mortality shields you from the weight of eternity. You cannot know the depth of time as we do." Klein grinned. "Oh, we know time just fine, scholar. We just don't let it stop us." A murmur passed through the gathered Kethri. What an odd response. Kalos gestured to the archive crystal, the centerpiece of the hall. Within it, 1,000,000 years of recorded history shone like a captured galaxy. "Here," Kalos declared, "is the record of our greatest minds. The culmination of centuries of wisdom. You may witness it, though I fear you will not grasp its significance." The humans stepped forward. One, a woman with cybernetic eyes, leaned in. Another, a man with silver streaks in his hair, folded his arms. They studied the swirling lights of history, their faces unreadable. Finally, Klein spoke. "This is impressive. Really. But tell me something, scholar." Kalos raised a brow. Klein tilted his head. "What's the point of all this knowledge, if you don't do anything with it?" Silence. Kalos stiffened. "We preserve history, human. That is our purpose." "Yeah. And what did you do when the Iraqs invaded the core systems last century?" Kalos bristled. "That was not our concern." Klein smirked. Funny. A couple of short-lived humans stopped that war in under 5 years." The gathered Kethri exchanged glances. The humans were bold, certainly, but this was simply ignorance. What could a species barely out of its infancy know of real endurance? Kalos folded his hands behind his back. "You speak as if your kind have mastered time itself. Tell me then, how does one such as you defy the inevitable? How do you overcome the inescapable fate of all mortals?" Klein's grin widened. "Oh, that's easy," he said. "We don't live longer than you, scholar. We just live faster. A race against time." Kalos frowned. "Clarify." Klein gestured at the towering pillars of the hall. "You Kethri live for hundreds of thousands of years. You spend centuries contemplating a single philosophical debate. 1,000 years perfecting an art piece. 10,000 years writing a book." He folded his arms. "Humans? We don't have that kind of time. So we move." He stepped closer, voice calm but charged with something electric. "You take 10,000 years to build a city? We do it in 10. You debate for centuries? We settle it in weeks. You wait for history to unfold? We make history. Kalos stared. This was nonsense. Utter nonsense. Time was not something one could outpace. It was immutable, unchangeable. But the humans were grinning. And then Klein delivered the final blow. How many of your scholars built a star empire within their own lifetime? Kalos stiffened. Such a thing is impossible. Klein chuckled. Not for us. The Hall of Time, a monument to eternity itself, felt strangely small. Kalos realized, with a slow, dawning horror, that he was not speaking to a species doomed by its mortality. He was speaking to a species that had weaponized it. A dead star, a living civilization. A soft chime interrupted the conversation. A Kethri attendant hurried forward, bowing. Scholar, we have received an urgent transmission. Kalos turned. What is it? The attendant hesitated. It's regarding the Tau 9 system. The dead star. Kalos nodded. Yes, what of it? The attendant swallowed. The humans, they've colonized it. Silence. Kalos' mind reeled. Impossible. The system was uninhabitable. It had been abandoned millennia ago. Even the Kethri had deemed it a lost cause. And yet. He turned slowly back to Klein, who was watching him with an infuriating smirk. Kalos narrowed his eyes. How? Klein shrugged. You spend 10,000 years considering a problem, scholar. We spend 10 solving it. The room fell into stunned silence. The weight of time, once a crushing force against the humans, now felt like their greatest weapon. Kalos, for the first time in 100,000 years, felt something he had thought impossible. Doubt. And the humans? They just grinned. Kalos had never felt rushed before. For over 100,000 years, time had moved at the proper pace. A slow, deliberate march toward wisdom. The Kethri were patient, thoughtful, eternal. And yet, standing before the smirking Colonel Klein and his unsettlingly confident human delegation, Kalos felt something utterly foreign. They moved too fast. The Hall of Time, once a sanctuary of reflection, now felt suffocating. The towering records of history, the eternal wisdom of the ancients, stood as monuments to something the humans seemed to reject entirely. Kalos turned to his attendant. Repeat that transmission. The attendant hesitated, glancing at the humans before speaking. The Tau 9 system, the humans have colonized it. The words hung in the air, dissonant and absurd. Kalos narrowed his golden eyes. Tau 9 is a dead system. The star collapsed 10 million years ago. No known species has found a way to inhabit it. His voice hardened. Surely you mean they attempted to colonize it? Klein chuckled. Nah, we're already there. Kalos inhaled sharply, suppressing a ripple of irritation. He had long since mastered the art of patience. But these humans, they tested it. He turned fully to Klein, folding his hands behind his back. Colonel, he said evenly, perhaps you do not understand the nature of entropy. The Tau 9 system is a graveyard of physics. The collapsed star's radiation alone would take centuries to neutralize. Klein smirked. Guess we didn't feel like waiting centuries. Kalos blinked. You cannot shortcut time, human. Maybe not, Klein said, but we outrun it. Kalos felt his patience fray. Explain. The human delegation exchanged grins. One of them, the cybernetic woman, pulled up a holographic interface. A planetary scan unfolded in the air, shimmering with unmistakable human architectural patterns. Kalos leaned in, his stomach twisting. There it was. A fully operational city. Impossible progress. This is New Eos, Klein explained. First colony on a dead star system. Kalos was silent. Radiation shielding? Klein continued. We adapted our space station technology and built underground habitats in 5 years. A younger Kethri scholar gasped. 5 years. Kalos shot him a warning glance, but the damage was done. The humans heard it. And they grinned. Klein spread his hands. See, you Kethri have the luxury of time. You take 1,000 years just to think about a problem. We don't have that. So we innovate. We adapt. We get it done. Kalos' fingers curled behind his back. This pace is reckless. Maybe, Klein said. But tell me, scholar, who's living on Tau 9 right now? Kalos had no response. The gathered Kethri shifted uncomfortably. The humans were not merely surviving, they were thriving. What should have taken millennia had taken years. Kalos exhaled slowly. And what do you gain burning through time like this? Do you not wish to leave behind something lasting? Klein tilted his head. That's the thing, scholar. We don't need 1,000,000 years to leave a legacy. His eyes gleamed. We do it in one lifetime. The memory of a star. Kalos turned away, his thoughts churning. His species had lived through the fall of empires, had seen entire civilizations collapse under their own weight. Time was undefeated. Yet humans, they moved through it like a wildfire tearing across a dry world. He thought of the oldest among them, the revered high scholar Elthos, who had spent 80,000 years composing a single philosophical treatise. A work of such depth that no being alive had yet fully read it. Would these humans, in their fleeting existence, ever reach such heights? Would they surpass it before the ink was even dry? His musings were interrupted by the voice of the cybernetic woman. You know, she said, it's funny. You Kethri think we're fragile because we don't last long. She met his gaze. But that's what makes us dangerous. Kalos raised a brow. Elaborate. She smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. When you live forever, she said, you assume you'll always have tomorrow? The words hit Kalos harder than he expected. The Kethri always assumed time was on their side. That there would always be another century, another millennium. That the mistakes of today could be corrected in the next 100,000 years. But humans? They didn't have tomorrow. So they acted today. Kalos' stomach twisted. For the first time he wondered, who truly held the advantage? The species that endured? Or the species that never waited? The unraveling of an empire. A chime rang through the hall of time. Another message. Kalos turned sharply to the attendant. Speak. The Kethri looked uneasy. Another report. It's about the core expansion. Kalos frowned. What of it? The attendant hesitated. The humans have reached the outer core before us. Silence. The Kethri scholars froze. Kalos' heart thudded in his chest. Impossible. The Kethri had been preparing the outer core for settlement for 10,000 years. Environmental adjustments, ecosystem simulations, slow but methodical work. The human expansion into the region had barely begun a few decades ago. There was no way. He turned to Klein. The human grinned. Kalos inhaled sharply. How? Klein folded his arms. Simple. While you guys were waiting for optimal conditions. His eyes gleamed. We adapted to the bad ones. The Hall of Time, once a monument to eternity, suddenly felt like a relic of the past. Kalos saw it now. The Kethri were not the masters of time. They were trapped by it. And the humans? They broke free. Kalos sat in silence, his golden eyes locked onto the human before him. This cannot be possible. The Kethri had spent 10,000 years preparing for the outer core expansion. The humans had beaten them there in mere decades. Across the Hall of Time, murmurs spread among the assembled Kethri scholars. Some whispered in disbelief. Others in anger. A few, perhaps the wisest, remained quiet, their minds racing to make sense of what they had just learned. Kalos folded his hands, controlling his breath. He would not allow his people to appear shaken in front of these reckless creatures. You claim to have settled the outer core, he said slowly, voice measured. Yet I do not see the proof. Klein smirked. He tapped a device on his wrist, and in the center of the hall, a massive hologram flickered into existence. A human city. But not just any city. The image showed a sprawling metropolis built within a landscape the Kethri had deemed uninhabitable. Violent storms raged in the sky, the planet's intense radiation flickering in the background. But amidst the chaos, there were towers of steel and glass, human vehicles cutting through the air, people walking the streets in defiance of nature itself. Kalos' breath caught in his throat. It was real. The murmurs in the chamber grew louder. The younger Kethri scholars shifted uneasily, their rigid beliefs cracking under the weight of undeniable evidence. One of them, an elder named Vitron, stepped forward, his voice cold. You have made a mistake, humans, he said. You rush forward, force nature to bend instead of adapting to it over millennia. But time is merciless. The universe will correct your recklessness. Klein chuckled. Oh, trust me. We know all about the universe's mercilessness. We're the species that dies every century, remember? Kalos exhaled through his nose. And yet you still think you can outrun time? Klein's grin widened. No. We fight it. A lifetime of wars. A new projection appeared next to the holographic city. A battlefield. Kalos' stomach twisted. The Kethri were no strangers to war. Their kind had seen countless conflicts rise and fall over the span of hundreds of thousands of years. But the wars of humans. The images showed humans fighting on dying worlds, bleeding but never yielding. Soldiers who lost limbs but kept fighting. Commanders who died in battle, only for another to take their place within minutes. In Kethri warfare, battles were measured in centuries. A campaign could stretch across generations. Strategies were carved into the annals of history, meticulously planned over eons before a single weapon was ever fired. But these humans? They adapted mid-battle. They turned defeats into victories in the time it took the Kethri to write a report. Kalo's voice was quiet when he spoke. Your species is unnatural. Klein raised an eyebrow. You mean different? Kalo's fists clenched behind his back. The weight of 10,000 years pressed against him, an instinctual rejection of this chaotic, fast-moving species. But deep inside, another thought clawed at him. Are we truly superior, or simply stagnant? The whisper of collapse. Another chime echoed in the chamber. A message. Kalos turned sharply. What now? The Kethri attendant hesitated. It is another report. From the Eridani sectors. Kalos gestured impatiently. Speak. The attendant swallowed. The human expansion has reached Eridani 6. The chamber fell silent. Kalos felt his heart pound. No. Eridani 6 was one of the Kethri's oldest colonies. It had existed for 70,000 years. It was a symbol of patience, of endurance. And the humans had caught up to it in mere centuries. The truth hit Kalos like a blow to the chest. The Kethri had always believed that longevity meant inevitability. That in the grand scale of time, they would always come out ahead. But now, in the face of these relentless humans, Kalos saw something horrifyingly clear. The Kethri are not moving forward. The humans were. The unthinkable question. For the first time in his long existence, Kalos felt doubt coil in his mind. Could it be possible that these fleeting creatures who lived and died in the blink of an eye, had found something greater than longevity? Did they burn brighter because they knew their fire would go out? He turned to Klein, staring deep into the human's eyes. What do you see, Kalos asked, when you look at us? Klein's smirk faded. He studied the Kethri carefully, then exhaled. I see a species that thinks it has forever, Klein said, voice calm. And because of that, you never move. Silence. Kalos' throat tightened. The weight of his ancestors of 10,000 years of certainty suddenly felt heavy. He had always believed the Kethri would outlast humanity. That patience was the ultimate strength. But now he wasn't sure if they were standing still or falling behind. Kalos sat motionless. The weight of 10,000 years of Kethri wisdom pressed against his mind, screaming for him to reject what he had just heard. But doubt had already sunk its claws into him. Klein's words echoed in his skull. You think you have forever. And because of that, you never move. The chamber remained silent, Kethri scholars exchanging uneasy glances. Some looked furious, others contemplative. But none had an answer. Because the truth was undeniable. The humans were not bound by time like the Kethri. They burned bright, short, and relentlessly. And against all odds, against the vast ancient sprawl of Kethri civilization, humanity was winning. Kalos exhaled, slow and measured. What is your goal, human? Klein tilted his head. Depends on which human you ask. Kalos narrowed his eyes. And you? Klein's smirk returned. We live, we die. So we make it count. Kalos almost scoffed. It sounded so reckless. But then he thought of Eridani 6. Of the cities built on worlds the Kethri had deemed uninhabitable. Of humans turning their short lives into an unstoppable momentum. It was terrifying. It was exhilarating. For the first time in his existence, Kalos wondered, what if the Kethri had been wrong all along? The Eternal must move. A low hum vibrated through the chamber. Another incoming message. The Kethri attendant hesitated before speaking. More reports. The humans have advanced beyond Eridani 6. They are moving toward the Midway systems. Kalos' fingers curled against his palm. The Midway systems were the true stronghold of the Kethri. If the humans were approaching them, then his breath stilled. The humans weren't just expanding. They were challenging the Kethri's dominion. For centuries, Kalos had believed that his people were eternal. That time itself was their greatest weapon. But time was not a weapon. It was a cage. And humanity had already broken free. He turned to his scholars, to the assembled minds that had guided the Kethri for millennia. You have all heard what has been said, he murmured. What say you? A heavy silence. Finally, Elder Vitrin, the most conservative among them, spoke. We should not be swayed by the flaring of a candle. His gaze was sharp as he regarded Klein. They are bright, yes. But they burn out. We endure. Klein chuckled. Is that what you think? Vitrin's expression darkened. It is what we know. Klein shrugged. Then tell me this. If you're so certain about your longevity, why are you afraid of us? Vitrin opened his mouth, then shut it. Kalos felt a strange sensation in his chest. The crack in their absolute certainty was growing. The Ketheri had spent thousands of years believing in their inevitable victory. That time itself was on their side. But the humans had flipped that idea upside down. A choice older than time. Kalos inhaled deeply. He had a choice. The Ketheri could cling to their past, their arrogance, their belief that time alone would secure their future. He looked at Klein. At the human who had spoken with such conviction, with such fire. Perhaps it was time for the Ketheri to run instead of walk. To fight instead of wait. To stop thinking they had forever. And to make their time count. Kalos stood, his long robes flowing. The chamber stilled. "We will not stand still," he declared. Gasps echoed through the hall. Vitrin's expression twisted in shock. "You would change our way of life? Abandon the wisdom of ages?" Kalos met his gaze steadily. "No. I would ensure we still have an age to live in." Silence. Then, from the corner of his vision he saw something astonishing. Some of the younger scholars, those born in the recent centuries, nodding. The tide was shifting. Kalos turned to Klein. "Human." Klein raised an eyebrow. "If we run, if we fight time like you do, what happens next?" Klein's smirk returned, but this time, there was something respectful in his eyes. "Then we stop being enemies." The unthinkable alliance. In the centuries to come, historians would mark this day as the moment the Ketheri changed forever. The day they stopped waiting and started moving. And it all began with a single truth. Time does not wait. And neither do humans. Rocket, do you think humanity's way is right, or was the Ketheri's patience wiser? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more epic stories. Fire, fire, fire.